In other news, Ben & Jerry's ice cream, no stranger to involvement in social justice issues, is now taking a hard stance on the Israel-Palestinian conflict. The dessert dealer announcing that it will not be renewing its licensing agreement with its Israeli franchisee in protest against the franchisee's continued sale to the occupied territories and settlements.
I refuse it. Number one, legally in Israel, you cannot stop selling or decide not to sell to a customer. It doesn't matter if the customer is in Tel Aviv or in Haifa. So legally I cannot do it. And as an Israeli, and as a manufacturer and company that lives here, there's no way I can say no to Israeli citizens. So when they realized that there's no way that I will stop it, they decided not to renew my contract.
Ben & Jerry's does plan to continue to sell to Israel proper, however, just under a different agreement that is yet to be determined. In any case, in the meantime, the decision is setting off a firestorm of conflict. Dozens of groceries, markets, and customers worldwide joining in a retaliatory boycott of the brand. And joining me now with more is in the studio, author and executive director of StandWithUs Israel, Michael Dickson. Then on Zoom, we also have economic consumer behavior expert and assistant professor Billy Abraham. Thank you both so much for joining us. Now, Michael, I'm going to start with you. Were you surprised by this? Where did you see this coming from?
I wasn't surprised. I was disappointed. There was massive pressure placed on Ben & Jerry's for a number of years. And unfortunately, what they've done is acquiesce to that pressure. And so within hours of the announcement being made, we saw 10,000 people join our Stand With Us campaign to write letters through our website to the CEO of Unilever, the parent company of Ben & Jerry's, and to Ben & Jerry's and to their top executives to tell them to rescind this discriminatory policy.
What do you think your chances are?
I think they're great because we saw this play out before. We saw massive pressure placed on Airbnb, and they, in the end, rescinded their policy. And part of that is because BDS destroys a company's reputation. BDS is an inherently anti-Semitic campaign. And of course, the idea that by withdrawing the sale to some Jewish communities of chubby hubby and fish food is somehow going to pursue the cause of Middle East peace is ridiculous. But at the same time, what it is discriminatory. So, of course, the Israeli licensee couldn't practice that discrimination, as you heard him say. And, of course, for them to ask so was completely wrong-headed.
All right, now, Billy, I want to turn to you. What do you think that this decision's effect will be on Israel's economy, assuming that it will go forward, and especially about the effect on Israeli and Palestinian workers who work with Ben & Jerry's?
Well, if you look at Ben & Jerry's Israel, which is located in the south of the country, it employs mostly, if not all, Israelis, according to data that I was able to find, about 160. But it will affect those Israelis. However, one major retailer has announced today on the radio that he's willing to help the local manufacturer, Ben & Jerry Israel, to produce a local brand and distribute it instead of Ben & Jerry, meaning it's a way to save those jobs of the 160 workers. As far as the economy is concerned, it's really hard to assess, but Ben & Jerry does hold a big share of the ice cream market in Israel. It's about 49%. However, I think that there are many alternatives to Ben & Jerry should this decision come into effect.
All right, so Michael, I want to come back to you now. Boycott Ben & Jerry's. It's trending on Twitter. It's all over the place, and as you mentioned, there's been a fierce response. However, it's interesting because this boycott is now coming actually from both sides. You have pro-Israelis boycotting over the decision to kill the license, and then you have the pro-BDSers who are boycotting the brand because of Unilever's promise to continue selling to Israel, but under a different agreement. Is Ben & Jerry's basically screwed?
Well, by this,
damned if they do, damned if they don't?
They are, because by this virtual signaling act, they've acquiesced to a campaign that is relentless. And
but now it seems that they've backed themselves into a corner, because if they reverse course...
Well, they potentially have. They've done themselves some reputational damage. And also they've opened themselves up legally and financially. In over 35 states in America, they've passed anti-BDS legislation. And I would say in nearly all of those states, they have pension funds that are invested in Unilever. Now, that's going to open them up because the states may decide, and I hope will decide, they actually don't want to invest in a company that practices discrimination. So this is going to cause them significant problem. Now, what you've said is instructive because what it shows you is BDS's true aim. They're not satisfied with any kind of gesture from Ben & Jerry's. They want the whole thing, the whole carton of ice cream. They want the destruction of the state of Israel. And Omar Barghouti, who's the head of the BDS campaign, who I've debated, has said that openly in his own words. So by giving them an inch, they just want a mile. And what they want is the destruction of the world's only Jewish country, and that's unacceptable.
Finance Minister Yair Lapid actually referred to how he might pursue action. Let's take a look.
ההחלטה של בן אנד ג'ריז היא כניעה מבישה לאנטישמיות, ל-BDS, לכל מה שרע בשיח האנטי-ישראלי והאנטי-יהודי, ואנחנו לא נשתוק להם. ביותר מ-30 מדינות בארצות הברית יש חוקים נגד כניעה ל-BDS שעברו בשנים האחרונות. אני מתכונן ללכת אחת ולדרוש מהן להפעיל את החוקים האלה נגד בן אנד ג'ריז, מפני שהם לא התייחסו אלינו בצורה כזו.
All right, now, Michael, how might this actually play out in court? Assuming Lapid makes good on this threat, what kinds of damages could be exacted from Ben & Jerry's?
Well, you're seeing the action already play out, and you've seen ambassadors to the United States and the United Nations, Gilad Erdan, send out letters now to governors of states all across the United States, asking them to take action if they've passed anti-BDS legislation to enact it, and to potentially put forward steps to withdraw their pension funds and other investments in Unilever, the parent company of Ben & Jerry's. It could cause them significant aggravation, as it should. They don't want anything to do with investing their state funds in discrimination. And this is purely discrimination. People should understand that when people say the West Bank, they mean the old city of Jerusalem. They mean the Western Wall. There are areas where Jews will not be sold to, according to this new policy by Ben & Jerry's. They have to rescind that or face significant action to them and to their parent company.
All right. Michael Dickson, Billy Abraham, thank you both so much for being with me today.
Pleasure.